Hello everyone, let's see if this is working. Well, let's see. Pop out the chat. I want it popped out so I can actually read it, because otherwise it's too tiny. Yep, hopefully that's working, and hopefully people are seeing it. We always hope, anyway. Right then, let's make sure this is all the live. This is the live chat, so I see all the messages, not just the top ones. Hi, Bijan. Another question: how did they balance out the weight of the forward turret for HMS Enterprise? Actually, what they had to do was they had to move some of the engines around, which is why she has a slightly different funnel arrangement. They're exactly 1 foot different. I'm told by the books I read. Paul from Chicago, BJ, by increasing the size of the warp field, that would be fun. That would be a lot of fun. And actually, the third part 3, when it comes up, will actually include certain things. So there is a taster of part 3 in the live. Hello, Blue Shirt Buddha. Hello, New York. Jenna, good evening, good Jay. Bijan. Be nice to see a framed photo of the crest of HMS Enterprise in future Star Trek. That would be good. And actually, here's the thing. Star Trek, Enterprise's mission in Star Trek is to boldly go and seek out new life. I would say that lives far more in the spirit of HMS Enterprise than it does in USS Enterprise. Because USS Enterprise has been a warship always. HMS Enterprise has often been a survey ship, which is boldly going and seeking new waterways. But, it works. Hi, Brock Payne. Sorry you can't stay. Hello, Albert. Hello, Bijan. Vision, probably. That'll be likely me next week when I go back to making the Marriott great again. Yeah. My experience in Marriott hotels in the UK has not been fantastic. So, yeah. Keeping quiet on that one. Hi, John Shea. Hi, Paul Richardson. Hi, Jay Richardson. Stephanie, I am very glad that I'm retired. My passion is rubbish, but at least I do not have to mix with all the... All good. Cool, they moved the engines. Yes, off license. Hey, I'm glad. Long time no see. Definitely. Nice to see you back again. Very regular. You have 2 live stream lives. How do I have 2 live streams live at the same time? I can barely operate one. As far as I know, this is my only one. I have no idea if this is more. That's new to me. Right then, I'm going to quickly have a check of my Go Live system. Also, if I can stream out on 2 at the same time, I will certainly try and use that to my advantage at some point in the future. I'm not sure why I have a second live stream going. Hopefully we're down to just one, he says. Can we please tell me if I'm down to 1? Because I'm not sure why it started a second. Evening, Phoenix. Evening, Vision. So hopefully everyone has now found this live stream. Oh, Vision. The horror Harrington novels are the Royal Navy in space. That took something out. Hi, Martin Duck. Off license. Yes, the USS Enterprise of Rodney's Universe is an exploration cruiser. Yeah, so she's more like, the Royal Navy ones than the American one. So, that's my point. That's why I find it always strange they have no mention of the Royal Navy one. And also, the Royal Navy signal for it is really quite cool. Let's see. Just quickly add that media file image. Bum, bum, bum. I'm basically... that is a very, very cool piece of red, the HMS Enterprise symbol. It's a very, very cool one. Anyway, back to the topic tonight, which is the E-class cruisers of the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. The Royal Navy's pair. There was a holodeck on HMS Enterprise in Star Trek. Agree, Star Trek is more HMS than US Enterprise. Yeah. Right then. The episode, that's better. I can see what you're talking about now. Then everyone, hello again. We're not to be able to just talk to you when appearing on the screen after quite a few hours of chat earlier. Yes, that was fun. We synced out, thanks to Daniel, who is, if it had been just me, it would have been probably 2 or 3 scenarios. But because I get to chat them through with Daniel, and he's quite happily volunteered to be the sort of guinea pig for this, I think it's going to be 5, 6, possibly 7 or even 8 videos which are going to be coming up. So it should be fun. Hello, Angus. Are you well? Staying cool? Yes, I had a very nice cold shower. Very fair. And unrelated, are you planning on releasing a Kindle version of your book? Hopefully. Jerison, Captain Archer has a picture of it on his day cabin wall, and Commander Shran asks if Archer served aboard the battlecruiser Kumari is named after the first ice cutter to circumnavigate Andoria. Oh, cool. Advices. These Emerald-class cruisers were built to face fast German cruisers. Just looked at their speeds, and I'm a bit disappointed. Honestly, at 33 knots and with their range, the thing the Royal Navy was sort of working at was, if it was facing German cruisers, yes, the Germans could always build a ship faster. But it was going to be building a ship fast enough to go long range. And the idea was that, yes, you can go a burst of speed faster than us. That's good. But we can hunt you down. And the good thing about the class was, and as we haven't reached the slide yet, it had, it could maintain 8,000 nautical miles at 15 knots, and it really could maintain that at 15 knots. And actually, when we consider HMS Emerald deploying to Nanking, she does the whole trip, which is, she leaves from Colombo, and by the time she gets to Nanking, she is averaged the whole way about must excess of 20 knots to make it in the time she did. Think about that. She does 20 knots the whole way around. That's pretty good for the 1920s. That's excellent for the 1920s, let's be honest. Shermack, for all the shade I throw at the Deutschlands. Yeah, well, we throw a lot in our chat. We found. Oh, was there, yeah, that is the thing. Me and Daniel have found a role for the Deutschland class in a World War II scenario. A role they'd actually be good in, and I could ignore them in. So it's beautifully sweet for me. Now, as usual, books up. We have Cruisers of World War II, International Encyclopedia by M.J. Whitley. We have British Commonwealth Warship Camouflage of World War II, Volume 3 by Malcolm Wright, which you've all seen before, but you won't have seen the recently arrived one. Finally managed to get hold of it. British and Commonwealth Warship Camouflage of World War II, Volume 2, Malcolm Wright's Battleships and Aircraft Carriers. So, pretty much everything you were never quite sure you wanted to know, but really actually do want to know about aircraft carrier and battleship painting. The monitors. And also, what's good is when you do it like this with a book at this sort of range for the camera, it really does show at how the camouflage did break up the outline of the ships and how it made them sort of more difficult for you to take visual targeting on them. There we go. HMS Repulse is a good one here from 1941. It's a really good book. Not relevant to today's topic, but you know, a good book. Metro, Roger Warships does an abysmal job of portraying these ships. Emerald widely regarded as one of the worst ships in game. That's really rather cruel because these ships actually were some of the best cruisers the Royal Navy had in the 1920s and arguably in the beginning of the 1930s. They were still some of the best light cruisers. They were the model for what would become the town class cruiser. They were the large light cruiser and they worked very well in it. And that's the point I try to make is that Henderson and a lot of the admirals, they are building on a theory and they're building on it when they're in command, but they're also, a lot of these things are being drawn from things they've already doing and they're doing well and they're just made better with the new technology. Those concepts aren't this sort of sudden random new ones, which is why they get funding from them, which is why they have the support of the people. You know, Henderson can get as many animals as he can on his hand because he can go, look at how successful, look at how good the Emerald and Enterprise have been. I'm just arguing to build a more modern version of them. And you can't really disagree with it. Vision, speed versus range. It's like a transatlantic liner versus one for the Indian, South American, Australian, or Pacific trade. The armed merchant cruisers were converted from those long-distance liners. Yep. It used to be far more fuel efficient than the transatlantic ones. Transatlantic ones were often used for fast troop movements because they could go so fast that some of them could literally outrun some types of torpedo. Jim, what's the? Thank you, Jim. Was the unit system design intentional to reduce vulnerability, or was it merely a consequence of using two Shakespeare engine units? Actually, it was their early experimentation with unit system. So they were using the Shakespeare as the model, but they were trying it out. And the thing is, it produced some compromises, but it worked it didn't work as well. The unit system really works well once you get the higher pressure engines. Once you get the very high pressure engines, that's when the unit system starts to work very well. And so this is the point of another fact in the Royal Navy's thinking as it goes through. But it is a good tester of it, and it does also increase survivability. And if you look at how, whilst the Royal Navy didn't bring unit design into their destroyers that early on, if you look at the way their cruisers and some of their battleships and aircraft carriers are built, you start to see unitization going on. Jerison. Mitchell Oates. All British ships lost terribly on board of warships. Leander class is suicidally bad. This is probably why I shouldn't actually play World of Warships. I might end up screaming at someone because I'll be going, these ships were not like this. It'll be me constantly on the phone to some poor customer service person going, do you realise the actual statistics of this warship? I don't have the great patience that Drac does. I am far more likely to go, do you want me to come there and program it for you, you things? This is not how this ship worked. Abadati, Victorious needs a war paint. You can't go on Italian cruises in plain grey camo. Let's see. Victorious's war paint. It's in here. Let's see. Well, there's Victorious. And there's some camo going on. And it carries on. It carries on. There's also Formidable in here somewhere as well. There's Formidable. There's Victorious again. Formidable. I actually like this look. The post-World War II look, the dark blue and the light grey. I wish Navy's had this still. That looks like a really swish look. If you don't want to go for the buff and white, that looks really good. Imagine the Queen Elizabeth class in that sort of dark blue and light grey on the top. They look really, really good. There's a beautiful one of Illustrious further on down in here. With her like it. And she just looks gorgeous. Yeah, see? This one. Illustrious. It just looks gorgeous. Why? Why do they all have to be just plain grey? It's boring. Sorry. So, Showmax, sorry, I got interrupted, but for as much shade as I throw at the Deutschlands, for their top speed, they can cruise at 20 knots. They can cruise at 20 knots, yes. But they are built a lot later than the E-Class are. And that's the point. The E-Class, A, aren't big diesel ships. They're a lot lighter than Deutschlands. And B, they're built a lot, the technology's moved on a lot more by the time they get built. So, Stinggrass, we should do a drinking game. Every time Doug says Henderson, take a swig. I think that game already exists. There are rules going around, floating somewhere on the Discord, I think. Oh. Mariam, looking at Wikipedia, because I'm currently too poor to buy all the lovely books, the E-Class had the old boilers, Yarrow, and the later cruisers got the Admiralty free drum boilers at model at high pressure. Bingo. So this is the other reason why I consider it quite good. They had the old style barrows, the boilers, and they still were doing this. They are the peak of the old style in many ways. Don't worry, Thomas Rollo. Thanks for coming. Ian Carl, strange layout with one of the funnels so far aft. They had lots of, how do I put it, interesting parts of their arrangement of how they sort of dealt with their smoke. Stephen Wilson, Ian Carr, apparently that was because the engines were moved further aft to balance the forward guns. Yes, on Enterprise. On Emerald, they're that far aft because I'm not sure why. But sort of on Emerald, they don't quite line up with Enterprises. The Emerald... On Enterprises, the engines are a foot further to balance the forward guns. The weight of the turret, basically. Stone Gross, yes, it would make you very, very angry. Yeah. Off license. Alexander, did you see that the modern Enterprise is presently in Beirut with supplies and aid? Said I saw the Middle East military advisor with the ambassador. Diplo RN role again. Yeah, and it's doing great. This is what I wanted to put into part 3 because, and I will be doing a part 3, which will include HMS Enterprise, both the previous 1970s vessel and the modern vessel, and what they get up to, because I think it's worthwhile looking at how this role has moved on, because these have all been, this name has always been associated with Royal Navy diplomacy, and they've been doing a lot of it. Aid, all sorts of things Enterprise gets up to. Angerson, after all that, World of Warships, well, possibly because that would be the easiest way to get me off their backs. After all that, World of Warships as a game balance skews heavily towards RN. Yes, well, with me shouting them quite a lot. Stephen White, got to admit, Stephen Cross got to admit the Italians' barber pole stripes did look good. Yeah, they did. While it might have reduced survivability, I think Aaron should have stuck with the white and buff colour scheme through World War II. Probably would have, but I think that after World War II, you could have gone back to it. Off-license, Enterprise is going to assess damage reports. Well, yes, that's what she's done. She has Enterprise, the current HMS Enterprise, has a small survey boat and her own survey systems, and is handed over a preliminary survey of the port that's looking at all the underwater infrastructure and all the underwater parts of the port, see how it's been affected. So you can bring in heavier ships. Before you can start bringing in this is the main port of Lebanon, and you can't, without it, functioning, you can't bring in the big heavy ships, which have all the aid and all the important stuff you need to start reconstructing. So you need to first survey. So actually, HMS Enterprise's deployment is one of the most important things that could have been done for them, for the people of Beirut. And it's, it's one of the things I find funny, because people are sort of going, oh, we've just deployed a survey ship. And I go, well, actually, if you don't deploy the survey ship, all the stuff which comes afterwards is not going to be able to go in there, because it won't know whether it's safe. It won't know if there's exposed electrical cables underwater. It won't know if the water is, or if there have been ridges or anything. Those big ships going in, they could get completely wrecked, and no one's going to send in those big ships. The insurance adjusters won't allow it, or rather, they won't have insurance. So I mean, the government of Lebanon will be having to bankroll it. It's just not a good idea. Anyway. Quickly, while we're on this slide, you can find me on Twitter, Patreon, and Global Maritime History. Thank you very much to the people who have found me on those things. It's always nice to be joined by people there. And as I said, it's thanks to the lovely people of Patreon that this book arrived. Jerison, British ships have no armour in World of Warships. Their only slight redeeming feature is their heal feature. They're also slow, but have low hit points and mediocre guns. When in real life, they tended to have more armour, were quite just as fast, and had fairly decent guns. Showmac, that looks so good. Without the Helios buff, it ruins the white. Do we need to start the campaign for proper warship paint schemes? I'm tempted to it. Right, Brad Pitter. Glad I've made a live stream. Well, thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for the super chat. Imagining the late nights waiting for reports of gold, who is more worried, the Exchequer or the RN? I think the Exchequer. But it's interesting, the first run had 3 cruisers and 2 battleships. The second run, which had even more gold, had pretty much 2 cruisers. And it was Emerald and Enterprise. And then, of course, HMS Edinburgh, a town-class cruiser, Belfast, that goes down with a whole load of Russian gold on it. So I have this feeling that the Germans twigged that if a cruiser was going to be carrying a lot of gold, it was going to start with an E. So if you saw a cruiser with an E beginning its name, you had to kill it. Because let's be honest, Emerald, Enterprise, Edinburgh, and I think there's another E cruiser which carried a lot of gold. Carried gold at one point. Oh, which class was the one? think one of the Didos, and it carried a lot of gold as well. So really, the Royal Navy does sort of give its going away. Every time we have to move gold, they go, where is the nearest E-type cruiser? But I think the RN and the Exchequer were just equally worried, probably petrified at that point. Dr. Ryan, can you show a diagram that gives the location of the midship 6-inch gun mount on these ships? Please try looking up the photos since it aren't clear enough. Right. So, my copy of Brassey's, which has this in, is not that clear either. But this one, let's see if I can get this to show. Right then. So, if I can position that properly. Now, the middle 6-inch gun, you can see, if you look really closely, exactly where it is before the foremast, before the around the tunnels. There are 2 flanking ones, and there's one along the centre line as well. So basically, what happens, one there, 2 here, on this waist position, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. So it basically goes, you've got the funnel, you've got the crater, you've got the launching platform / catapult system for the fighter, and you've got a 6-inch gun sitting between the 2. And you've got 2 6-inch guns aft, and a 4-inch gun here as well. You've got 2 6-inches and 2 4-inch guns here. And then you've got your machine guns, your pom-poms positioned here, and machine guns here, and you've got your 6-inch guns forward. So it's a nice spread out of the weaponry. It's actually quite a well comprehensive design. And, surprise, surprise, where does the Royal Navy send its large surface raiding, well, anti-surface raiding light cruisers? Straight to, the Indian Ocean, where they can act as a deterrent to the Yanks and the Japanese. It's, it's amazing. Hi, King George V. Beep, beep, I'm in my mum's car. Ian Carr, is a colour scheme for USS Robin included? Understand? Yes, there is. I'm very happy to show this book literally arrived 3 days ago and it's been in quarantine, so I've only had it today. It's been a case of I've been doing all the work and I haven't been able to open it up and look at it. This is in her USS Robin. Look. She's blue. She was blue. Not Robin Egg Blue, though, which I find so wrong. She should have been in Robin Egg Blue. To be USS Robin, she should have been Robin Egg Blue. But she does look good. JP, how much did Enterprise's dual turret have in common those with Nelson Rodney? Not a lot, actually. The reason I say this is her turret is built as a light cruiser turret and is structured for that. So yes, it does penetrate. It's a penetrating, it's not a UD, it's not a BD, between deck system. And which theirs is as well a between decks, but honestly, hers is far lighter, and it's a very good model for. Honestly, it becomes the basis for the double turrets and the treble turrets that are 6-inch guns. That turret is, without that turret, the Royal Navy of World War II, as we understand it, wouldn't have existed. Ghost of the Dread Pirate Roberts. Hello. How you doing? Don Royston. Hi, Dr. What's the possibility the RN could have intercepted the Japanese Pearl Harbor attack? If they'd had a fleet out there, yes, they could have. But without a fleet out there, there's no chance they could have done. But it's one of those scenarios. If you'd had a RN carrier battle group operating in the Pacific, because for some reason the RN had been out there, they could have done it. And they probably would have at least phoned up the Americans and said there's a Japanese carrier battle group coming your way. Steve Ross, and speaking of RN camo, got to love Victorian Navy's black hulls with white upper works and buff funnels. That was rather cool. They did look nice. And could have made the Polish vessels bright white and very angry red. That way the Germans would know who was killing them. John Walkley, underwriter before, adjuster after. I'm not sure what that's in answer to, but I believe there's probably some sort of question going on about insurance. Derp Squad, has the Edinburgh wreck been found unsalvaged? Yes. They developed all the technology to be later used on the Titanic was first developed and used to get the gold out of HMS Edinburgh. Oh, it's a good start, but I think we can do a better shirt than that, Daniel. I really think we can. And if you don't know, Daniel has just put in the Campaign for Proper Warships paint schemes T-shirt into the chat. Thomas Roller, another RN cruiser, HMS Euryalus. Could well be her. I think it would have been her. Basically, if they were looking for gold, as I said, they sent them with all E, and I have no idea. Alex Hunt, hello, Dr. Clark. Hello. Eric Hogan, wait, they quarantine books now? We do every parcel which arrives in this house basically goes for about 2 days sitting in the garage. And the simple reason is because my mom and sister are both shielding, have had the letters they've had from the government, and it's just a lot safer that way. The warnings from the doctors. It's amazing. I have to admit, the one thing since coronavirus has happened is that doctors have looked again at all my mum's various issues, and suddenly a whole lot more support has appeared. We've had people come round the house to sort out some extra railings and things for her to help her get around the house more easily because she walks using sticks. And luckily, before we were having the roof done, and the reason we were having the roof done is because we had a leak a while back. Yeah, we got in one group, they managed to muck it all up. So we had to get in a second group to fix the work they've done. And luckily, they'd finished the work literally just before all these rains hit, because otherwise we'd have had water pouring through the roof. So, yeah, it's been interesting, but that does mean everything goes quite carefully into the sort of the garage to be stored and looked after. Right. William Cox, USA would never have built the Aerofuses because they lack enough deck space for the obligatory couple dozen 1.1 inch or 14. Possibly. Alex Hunt, white upper works on coal burning ship. Madness. It was terrible to keep clean, but it worked. Aaron, good evening, Doctor. The E-Class are supposed to be fleet cruisers to attack enemy shipping and for scouting? Pretty much. Their job... Okay, so I got into this a bit because one of the questions I saw that came up, and there is a lot of things which I've forgotten about the E-Class because there's only 2 of them built, and they do develop a bit of a mythical status. They are these large light cruisers, and I'm not talking large light cruisers in terms of Fisher. I'm talking large light cruisers in terms of, well, I've got an early. Thank to them, the earliest archive document I have of Admiral Henderson, or as he was at the time, Lieutenant Commander Henderson, getting involved in a ship design is actually with these cruisers, and it's while he's working at the Admiralty with Jellicoe, and they put the E class. The reason they come out so much different to the C's and D's is because they are very much sold, and Henderson writes papers, as large light cruisers to deal with surface raiders, things like Q ships operating as surface raiders, i.e., what we would actually see a lot of in World War II, thanks to the Germans, and station flagships, and to an extent as also, and this is going to sound strange because I've been saying about how it was moving away from this, large destroyer group flagships. They work really well as this. They're designed from it as the get-go, which is why there's size difference there is. And one of the interesting things is, if they had not been put in when they've been put in their orders, if their orders had been put in a year later, you would probably have seen them coming with 3 to 4 double turrets. And slightly bigger. And they would have really then been the first modern cruisers of the Royal Navy. And imagine World War II, what navies would look like in World War II if you have straight after World War One a cruiser appearing, which is basically and minus the engines and the sort of the higher terms, a Leander class vessel, and that's the baseline cruiser for the interwar years. Think about how the navies develop at that point. It's really sort of an interesting thing to think about. And to an extent, that could have been quite possible, considering, again, what she's armed with. But a sort of bigger, she'd armed like a Leander, but bigger. So town class sort of size, but armed like a Leander. Thomas Rotter, thanks for explaining layout of gun mounts. It's a pleasure. In-car, 5.25-inch turrets aboard KGV's Didos were the same, I said. They were pretty much the same. The 5.25 isn't a bad weapon system. The Dido, as I've often explained, my problem with the Didos isn't their guns. It's that they're crammed full of things, and no one bothers to give them space to actually operate properly. Derp Scott, that's suggesting that that's disappointing that Edinburgh has been salvaged. I was going to suggest a field trip. Jeff Miller. So by the end of the war, the Enterprise had one more 6-inch than the New Zealand Leanders. Yeah. Jeff Miller. What was the background to transferring HMS Enterprise to Canada? And was this in addition to HMCS Ontario and HMS Uganda? Yes, it was supposed to be in addition. And basically, it was an idea mooted to give them an extra ship for dealing with their commitments vis-a-vis Japan. Basically, every 6-inch gun that was possible to be able to put forward was going to be needed, it was felt, for the war against Japan and the invasion, in the upcoming invasion. Jeff Peter, some of the refusers did get a brace of quad 40mm though. Good times. We like the quad 40. Jerison, you got in second contractor to fix the first contractor. Not Jerison, unfortunately, not in the UK. In the UK, you are supposed to pay on completion. We actually didn't pay the first contractor at all. They've got zilch. And the second contractor will get paid once the surveyor has okayed all the things. This is the thing. What's interesting is my sister, of course, is a civil engineer, deals with building profession all the time. I teach history of engineering. They, for some reason, the first contractors thought we wouldn't get a surveyor to check the work before we paid them. And they were trying all sorts of funny things to get my mom to pay them early. She refused to. We got the surveyor in earlier to check the work rather than doing the whole way through, found the problems. There were all sorts of issues, but anyway, they had to leave, and we ended up getting the second one infected. So, it's fun. And now the roof is fine. Alex Hunt, if you say large light cruiser 5 times, Jackie Fisher will appear and make you build something utterly bonkers. Large light cruiser, large light cruiser, large light cruiser, large light cruiser, large light cruiser. So far, no Jackie Fisher. We're safe. Oh. I actually generally audible singer achieve generally audible sniggering at that. Yeah. William Cox, our fusers saw a lot of action in dealing with aircraft in Mediterranean. The air fusers were very, very good ships. My whole point when I'm looking at the C's, D's, and E's is that they had all got the potential to be upgraded, which the Royal Navy knew, and they were planning to upgrade them quite heavily prior to World War II, and it was World War II which interfered. If World War II had been put off till about 1941, 1942, the C, D, and E class cruisers, which would have been fighting, would have been very, very different. In fact, I even wonder if there is a potential, although it's a difficult one to imagine, but a potential that you could have had the E class modified to have a forward and after treble 6-inch turret and some 4.5-inch guns, or at least a double forward and aft, which could have been interesting. They don't. William Cox was not disparaging them, merely observing them from a USN perspective. Yes, from a USN perspective, the RF users were terrible, but from the RM perspective, they were excellent. And that's the thing. This is why I try and emphasize so often. I don't say there's necessarily good and bad ships. The question I always ask is whether the ship meets the nation it's building its needs. And that's why there's a difference. We were talking on Discord, and I've raised the point the other day because I'm, interested in it. Is the idea of taking a San Giorgio class of the Regia Marina, the Italian Navy, the current Italian Navy, and seeing if you could use that as the basis of design for a Royal Navy ship. And the first thing I said was it's probably going to end up about 4,000 tons heavier because of the range of areas the Royal Navy works in. And this is the thing. That would make it terrible for the Italian Navy, but excellent for the Royal Navy. Re-giving Enterprise to Canada for Japan. She had done good service supporting the Canadian Second Army in Northwest Europe from June to September 1944. She had. Jerison, 5% retention is standard in the UK. Not in... I think it is in commercial building, but not in pub. I know my sister did look into it, and I'm going to trust her on this one. She probably knows what she's talking about. She does. She's got a PhD in civil engineering and is a chartered civil engineer. She's scary qualified. Jeff Miller, the twin 6-inch on the pre-World War II World War I counties had a common sleeve, leaving them out with dispersion problems. The post-war twins had independently mounted barrels, so did not have these problems. There were lots of issues with the pre-war ones. It's time for a year of battle cruiser protection. Albert Zassi, so Courageous, Furious, and Glorious should be named large Fisher cruisers? Yes. Yes, the UK is putting the Type 2631 production on hold to build some battle cruisers. Don't tempt fate. Don't tempt fate. Vision. USN semi-armored St. Louis class cruisers were supposed to be new Olympics, but seamless sailors. Could you imagine them built instead with twin 6-inch mounts on large light cruisers hull like Enterprise? Yeah, it could be. John Workley. Perhaps you should mention the Hawkins class and how they relate to these. Well, I did this in part 2, and hello, John. Thank you for joining us. In response to your comment earlier, I'm still annoyed about you mentioning the fluffy toys, though. But leaving that to one side. So, the Royal Navy was building two types of cruiser at this point. They were looking at a heavy cruiser for heavy cruiser duties. How do they differ from light cruiser? Well, heavy cruisers are orientated far more around fleet actions, but also around the various jobs they'll have to do in terms of fighting and combat support. And to an extent, the heavy cruiser is the scouting force for your main fleet. So they're designed around 7.5. They have far thicker belt armor. They have far more armor in terms of their sort of styling, subdivision, and internal build. Okay? The E-class are large light cruisers. They are very different in terms of tonnage. They are very different in terms of their design. They're basically a halfway house between what is the Hawkins class and the D class. And as I was saying earlier, these top out about 9,500 tons in terms of full load. The Hawkins are about 12,000 tons in full load. The Season Ds are 6,000 to 7,000 tons in full load. So, yes, they are bigger, but they're not so big they're in the heavy cruiser category, and that's not their role. The heavy cruisers are, to an extent, designed for fighting the battles and for engaging larger enemy forces should they be being there and being the sort of the flagship of cruiser groups and being the distant station vessels where you don't want to send battleships but you need a major presence to deter enemy fleets. Large light cruisers are designed to be your presence ships in your more peaceful areas, your second line areas, but also they are your surface raiders. They are independent and do independent action, and that's what they're designed around. So, timing wise, yes, but honestly, no. And also, the 7.5-inch gun, because that's a failure, doesn't mean you jump to the 6-inch gun. It's one of the reasons they jumped to the 8-inch gun, because the 7.5-inch wasn't enough bang for what it was worth. And that's why they got the 8-inch gun, and that's one of the reasons why the county's coming. But also, everyone else upgrades to an 8-inch gun anyway. And honestly, the Hawkins class are more trouble than they are worth in so many ways. Steam Cross, Dr. I recall reading some of the 5.5s on the Cheshire Hood were welded guided guns. Could they have been a competitor to 6-inch RSOs? Could have been, but weren't really, because again, the 6-inch was at the level it was justifiable the weight of the gun on the smaller ship. The 5.5 was almost as much as heavy as the 6 without being quite the same capabilities. So for a few extra tons, you got a far more capable weapon. So that's why they went for the 6. Gone Eagle. Dr. Clark, did the RN ever think about using oxygen torpedoes like Japan did? Yes, they did. And auto-fueled torpedoes. And all sorts of other things they've considered and worked with. And of course, she's the practical one, eh? It's like actually, no. I would. This is the interesting thing. In my family, I am the historian. My sister is the engineer. However, every time something needs to be built, desk or maintained or anything like that, it always ends up being my job to do the building work and do all the work, do all that. Karen comes up with some of the designs, and then I execute them. Because thanks to my granddad and my father, I did learn a fair bit of carpentry, but also thanks to school and design and technology. So we sort of share the practical side. In car, would an upgrade of turrets from single to double or triple turrets mean a replanning of the size of magazines below? It would mean a reorganizing, but if you're reducing the number of 6-inch mounts, you can reorganize it far easier. And also, their major magazines were fore and aft anyway, so as long as you could connect to those, you were fine. And the way you could do it, you could easily connect to them. Eamon, these two ships are significantly bigger than the preceding V class. So they would have been more able to upgrade it than the C&E classes? Definitely. They have a lot more space for upgrading. In fact, they're built with space for upgrading. Eric Hocken, I wish your mum and the sister well, still all the best. My mother-in-law, who lives with us, is in a condition that she needs oxygen and a walker. We're taking precautions for everything. Your books are stored. My books are stored on the second floor, far away from everything. Very sensible. My books are all over the house. Alex Hunt, you really need to do a special internal subdivision. It is interesting because it's how I work out most of the ships, because it's going to sound strange. It's how I was taught by my dad to evaluate the ships. You can decide, is this a battleship or a battlecruiser by its internal subdivision, basically. It's how much of a honeycomb is it. And some of the friends, my dad used to use the phrase, is it a crunchy bar or an aero bar? In terms of its, structure. And that's how you start to think. You start to think, okay, look, internal structure. That's actually, that's a heavy cruiser. That's looking towards the sort of a battleship. Oh, that's a light cruiser. You can tell because of the size and shape of the spaces internally. Don G. Hi, just Patreon. Thank you. Please get your gonks to form up properly. They're currently conforming into forces stereotypes. Your gonks to form up properly? Gonks? I'm confused by that one, but I'll work it out. William Cox, power projection versus power multiplication. Yeah. Like son, and how you design your ship's internal zone based on roll. See, this is the thing. This is what they actually did. You so often people don't forget the first thing you start when you're constructing a ship with is what do I need to put in it, and what's the role I need to do it, because that will decide what you need to put what role you want to do decides how you're shaping the hull. What you need it to do decides how big the hull is, because it decides how much you're going to put in the hull. Which is why I really like the Bay class landing ships, because basically all the engines and everything and the dock, etc., is in the hull, and then everything else is built on top. So you can do whatever you like, really, with the design. But that's something different. Cox, I do find a work there was World War ships had little in the way of internal division compared to later ones. It's one of the lessons of World War One. Oh, Sigmund, you keep talking about Fisher and tempting fate by invoking him. Are you going to do a video about that fascinating and very influential admiral? I will do at some point. I'll do something on Fisher. Because he has some good ideas. And, it's one of the things that I find annoying is that we build the Dreadnought class and then we don't build the follow-ups. Japila, how did the Enterprise brig structure affect her ability to be a flagship? Can you talk about her bridge design in general? Right, so Enterprise was built with a county-style bridge. She had a county-class bridge. Both her and Emerald would be used as flagships. They had very big bridge spaces for light cruisers. And they were suitable for the flagship role. There is a reason why when Somerville is sorting out a fast force in the Indian Ocean for cruisers, a cruiser fast force, he picks an E-class as its flagship. Force H. The leader of the cruisers. And this is in a war where you have town class, all these various cruisers around. The leader of the cruisers, the flagship for them, is HMS Enterprise. Why? Because they have a lot of space. They have a whole load of radios. And they're used to it. And there is a reason why in D-Day, when they're doing the operations, they have a captain, a commander, and a lieutenant commander aboard as their 3 senior officers. Well, the first lieutenant is a lieutenant commander, because they are doing the command ship role. So the captain is basically acting as Force Commodore. So that means the commander is basically acting as captain, and the lieutenant commander is acting as XO. Which is why he's experienced enough and gone on, and he just doesn't bother when he's captain. He actually carries on issuing orders and only informs them afterwards. Oh yeah, my captain was dead. So actually, the group was being run by a lieutenant commander for a while. Even turning 343. Even better, could we have video on everything that Fisher didn't get through? Oh, that would take too long. That'd be multiple videos. Paul Johnson, in the US, surely it's how many guns can we have before anything else? Possibly in the interwar years. And I mean, the first thing Fisher did was how fast can it go? How much fire can I bolt onto this? To an extent. Discord. What was the largest hand-loaded weapon in the RN? I know the Mark 16 4-inch shell and cartridge topped out about 35 kilograms. I think you're looking at one of the 4.7 inches, but I'm not sure which one. I know some of them got freaking heavy. Paul Johnson, I think the US wanted long ranges. The RN wanted lots of numbers of ships, so it goes a bit smaller. Yeah. Basically, one's building to fight a big Mahanian conflict in the Pacific. One's building to fight a Corbettian conflict in the whole world. It makes a difference. William Cox, having handled 538 projectiles as semi-combustible cartridges, I would suggest that's the heaviest gun for which hand-holding loading can be effective. It was. I'm not sure about the 5.25s. I don't think they were. They might have been, but I don't think they were for some reason. But I could be wrong on that one. I haven't been reading up on them recently, so my brain could be wrong. And if you can hear it, the thunder is outside. Danny Freeman, 6-inch guns were not one piece, so had cordite and projectile as separate loads. Yes. And to be fair, they weren't necessarily as manual loading as people like to think. Because everything's brought up internally in the turret. Especially the double 6 inches. The single 6 inches, they're not QF, and they're very much dun dun dun. Dun dun, multiple bits carried and loaded. So technically man done, but not a single unit cartridge. Calum Gasman, on land there are plenty of 6-inch hand-loaded howitzers still. Yeah. But if you consider the Royal Navy's 4.5-inch guns and most people's 5-inch guns are completely automated. Jeff Bealer, how come Emerald lands the centerline Y mount and Enterprise lands her midships mounts instead and gets them back? Well, pretty much Enterprise gets them back because Enterprise has the sort of captain who demands them back. And Emerald is going for different duties. So rather than have that back, they take an increased AA armament. I think the propeller on 6-inch guns might have been manhandled, but the shells weren't. It weighed about 30 to 32 pounds. Yeah. USN 5-inch shells were roughly 50 pounds. USN 6-inch shells were roughly 150 pounds. They weren't light. They were heavy freaking things. And I love this book. But let's just, if I can get it lined up. Before I go in, Nanking. I want to emphasize this. I went through several different lists to try and work out the RN task group. And then I thought, just in case I've missed something, I will check Wikipedia. And Caradoc is down as a destroyer. She's not. She's a C-class light cruiser. And I think Aphis was also down as a destroyer, and she's a gunboat. But they had pretty much the right names there. But, the Royal Navy it's quite a hefty force. And Nanking is a very interesting incident because it's basically sea power being used to drive off land power from a port. And they can do it because they have so much firepower compared to the army that's attacking them. The army is basically a ground-pounding infantry force with a few artillery devices, but nothing that can really fight this lot. And this lot are Armageddon on a plate in comparison. He's also cool. If you want to look up a guy who completely sets the tone for what will be the motor torpedo boats in World War II, Captain Augustus Agar is really, really cool. Right, now we got this up. Now, these are the complete schemes of Emerald. And what I find interesting is how long she retains her aircraft launching capacity. She has it till 1940. She has it well into 1944. Because of her roles as Flagship, because of her roles leading things, she needs her own. She needs her own aircraft to look around. Right now. Building future-proof ships of generous sizes was made difficult by treaty obligations. That it was, Ian Carr, that it was. Daniel Freeman. I was thinking about, without a mechanical rammer. Now see, the later 6-inch guns were designed for rolling shells and propellant from the lift onto a tray and rammed. Earlier were carried. Yep. Gonks. Undisciplined fluffy shower. Scarred by CCF interforces piss taking. You mean this lot? Well... Honestly, there's only so much organization they can take when they're all balanced on iron brew bottles, which serve to provide me with cold water for the whole day. I'm to say I do believe in recycling. That's why I have them there. That, and also the channel has become synonymous with iron brew, so I just no. But I think long term, what I might do is turn them into a wall feature at some point. It depends. There's also ideas of, eventually, if I get as I'm going to keep doing this, but if I get a more professional space for doing this from set up, then you might see a wall of iron brew bottles behind me or something like that. I've got ideas in my head. Then Frim, Navy Weps has the loading signals for the 6-inch and 50 guns. Oh, cool. Take care, Mitchell Opes. Good luck with the dentist. Jeff Beeler, how did they end up being the first ships with a knuckle? A bit of luck. Pretty much a bit of luck, and benefits of some of their design structure. Same cross. Would you say that the nearest similar ship was the Japanese Kuma starships, their post-World War I cruisers, which acted as DD flotillas and often had flight facilities? I would say the Kumas are certainly heading towards that category, but honestly, no one really builds the same style ship because no one needs the same starship as the RN. It's just flashing up my copy of US and ONI's picture of the Kuma. Yeah, I would agree. They're to an extent aiming for a Japanese interpretation of a similar purpose. And they do have 7 6-inch guns by my counting. But honestly, 7 5.5 inches they have. But they carry a lot less torpedoes, and I wouldn't really consider them. How do I put it? How do I put this politely without sounding very, very rude? Pretty much what the Kumas always remind me of is they really are flotilla leaders. They really are about looking after the destroyers, about doing what needs to do to get the destroyers into contact. I would say they are far more about fighting the destroyers through to combat, whereas the Emerald class are far more about surface raiders and being surface raiders themselves. Okay. That's good. Army brings a 3-inch artillery piece. HMS Vindictive. Oh, it's so little and cute. Well, Vindictive, of course, had the 7.5-inch guns. She had time as the Royal Navy had tried to build a small carrier out of a cruiser and then thought, no. In fact, honestly, the Hawkins class are a long list of the Royal Navy trying to find ways to make them work. I don't really consider them as, successful as anything as in all the others. In cast, sponsored by Brit. We can always hope. Jerison, I guess Augustus Agar was our yard superintendent for fit out of our favourite not a carrier. Yes, which really, and then we get surprised that Unicorn does all she does. She has a VC winner who was charged into a Russian base in the most flimsy-looking boat known to mankind to launch a torpedo at them. As her fitting out, of course she's going to come with a ready-made, inspired desire to start shooting things. Well, honestly, if I'm emulating using the iron brew bottles, the question is, what caliber would the brew bottles be if you filled them with high explosives and emulated tribal? About 1.5 inch. It's really, really piddly. This is possibly getting onto the level of 2 inches. That's the thing. People often forget how big these shells are. I really have got to. I have somewhere in my collection, somewhere in a box, somewhere in this house. I grabbed it from work. I have got a shell casing, a clean shell casing of a 4.7-inch shell, but I can't find it at the moment. It's somewhere in one of the boxes, and it showed a size of 4.7-inch. Jeff Wheeler, what were they like in battle? The E-Class did very well. In the battles they got into, they did very well. They acquitted themselves very well, and handsomely for their ships. In honesty, they would have been if they'd fought battles in the 1920s against anyone, they would have massacred them. Against their equivalent foes then. By World War II, they still proved very effective. And what's often forgotten is how many multi-runs, etc., HMS Enterprise gets up to. How much stuff they get up to in the Far East. These ships went toe-to-toe with Japanese aircraft, Japanese ships, and they did okay. They survived. When you think you're facing far newer, more powerful, theoretically more powerful ships, and you come out of it alive, you've done well. Don G, MT's rattling around on deck. You'll be leaving your flash doors open next. Drac would not approve. No. We'd never leave the flash doors open. As I said, they're being kept for it be potentially part of a wall sort of mural thing. My idea is possibly mount them on the wall and see if I can make a huge bottle shaped out of the bottles. Could be quite cool. The Ceres class were the last class before the E's to go into the water and had some issues with their bows and being wet. So the last of the season E's got different bows. Yes, they did. And the E's got the knuckle to try and give them better riding. So that's why they're shaped up, but their bow is shaped the way it is, as Jeff Beeler has pointed out. And then Patrick, can you make a video over the Dutch Navy Freulen class DDs? Probably. I've so far concentrated on the Royal Navy, but I'm going to start wandering around other navies. Like I've wandered back in time to do sort of stuff on the Age of Sail. I'm going to wander to other navies as well. I guess Captain Aga was upset that an Italian sunk 2 battleships, on the Adriatic. Yes, Carl, I know. Part of my job as a damage control investigator was to corral the cartridges from our Knox Class 538. Good luck with that. Last question today. For bilge pumps, are you guys going to address what's happening in Eastern Mediterranean and the Aegean? How could I suggest that as a topic if necessary? Tweet it at us. Basically, tweet at the three of us and put hashtag bilge pumps in it. And that's what we do. We always say, because not everyone who listens to bilge pumps listens to our various YouTube videos and all these things, we always say, tweet it at us and we'll pick it up. So just tweet it at the three of us. We've all got Twitter accounts. We all chat away quite happily. And we'll pick it up and we'll have a look at it. We've already done something this week on China and Taiwan, which is going to come out next week. Take care, Eamon. All right, JP, what can you tell us about Enterprise in Glasgow taking on German destroyers and their Bisbee? But for starters, it wasn't really Enterprise in Glasgow alone. They had other friends there as well. And basically, the Royal Navy noticed that the Germans had some blockade runners coming through. The Royal Navy went, in the nicest way, we've been doing blockade a long freaking time. You think you're going to get them past us? You really think? And so they deploy HMNZS Gambia, Glasgow, HMS Glasgow, Penelope, the Arethusa class, and Enterprise. And they go for it. And they have destroyers there as well and all sorts of things often. But on one of these occasions, the Germans basically are trying what the Turkish are sort of doing now. You've got the civilian ship trying to get through as the blockade runner in a curtain of destroyers and torpedo boats. And the Royal Navy cruisers get guided in by aircraft. And let's put it this way. They do a job which would make a tribal destroyer proud. They really do. They decide that they're going to engage them as closely as they can, and they keep firing as fast and as hard as they can. And you have a lot of... The thing is, what they found quite interesting was because Enterprise, because of the way her guns were set up versus the Glasgow's or Gambia's, in that you could have 4 targets being engaged by Glasgow, 3 by Gambia at the same time. They were, to an extent, at a disadvantage. Arethusa, of course, Penelope could only take 3 on the same time. With Enterprise, she was gamely engaging about 6 targets at the same time quite happily. That was good. I always found it odd that a ship's commander gets awarded a VC or Medal of Honor, but the crew, just as brave and don't throw the captain with a death wish overboard, aren't mentioned. In this case, it's a little torpedo boat which has a very, very small crew, and they all do get awards. The captain, Agar gets a VC, but the others get, I think, various awards appropriate to their ranks. Take care, Emma. Donji. Day trip to pretty hard to look at the shells? Ooh, tempting. Adrian Pataka. Or how about the VAM class minesweepers, Dutch like the Abraham Sitchin? Tempting. Bridget Gavay. I once heard a story about where one of the E's tricked the Germans into thinking it was an R. Is there any truth in this? Yes. and it was Enterprise, and it was while she was with Force H, and they were doing something near the Bay of Biscay, and the Germans were reporting there's a battleship, there's a battleship, there's a battleship, and the only ship in the area was HMS Enterprise going, hello, world. Okay. Incar, why the 8-year delay between launch and commissioning ECAS? Basically, it's the end of World War One. They are built in private yards, but they are then taken, once they've been launched, to Royal Navy dockyards, which are slowly working through things, and they're slowly worked on and commissioned as there's the money available, which is why it takes 8 years. Originally, I was asking why were only 3 cars planned? That was the first batch. 3. So that was the 3 that were ordered. Whereas if you think with the D class, the C class, they're ordered in batches of 3 or 4, and then another 3 or 4 ordered, then another 3 or 4. So they'd probably be about 6 to 12 if ordered if they'd really wanted to. You'd probably ended up with similar numbers of C's, D's, and E's if the Royal Navy if World War One had kept going another couple of years. And as I said, I think what you would have seen with the E's is you'd have seen them turn into an early version, sort of a Leander in terms of armament, with about 4 double turrets, and everything else worked out. Vision. At university, in the architectural students vertically stacked beer bottles up in rows in the tall, double-hung windows. Looked cool at night. Cool. Inca, Emerald. How and often would the RN recrew a ship during a 7-year tour abroad? Technically, they would do it about twice. Technically. But in the case of Emerald, actually, they didn't recruit it that often. There was a trickle manning system used to recruit and sort it out. Good evening, John Luke. Roderick Vega. These make the tribals proud. Yes, they did. It was heartwarming. Danny Freeman, Adrian Pantang, you are making sense, but how much do you want to see Dr. Clark mangle the pronunciations? Okay, Adrian Plantanga, I will try. Let's see. Abraham Christensen. I think I did that okay, but that was mostly thanks to turning 3434. John Luke, good evening. Hello, I said that. Distrustful. Regarding medals, officers will always get better medals than the average trooper or sailor. The British are sometimes quite good at giving their troopers medals when they're not giving them to the officers as well. The British have a sort of idea with that medals inspire everyone else, and you have a lot of lower ranks, a lot more lower ranks than you have officers. So if they can justify giving those medals to a lower rank as well, they will do. Amruf Anand, hello. That's right. What is your orange drink you all seem to be ingesting? Iron Brew. It's interesting. Carmen Gasper, the mass and similar-sized boats were the most adrenaline-rich craft until the invention of the dive bomber, and not much bigger crew-wide. No, they really weren't. Turning 3434, why weren't more E-class built? Is it postponed due to treaty year? No, really. It's due to the end of World War One, and the Royal Navy has got C's, D's, E's in production, but basically what it says is kind of like with destroyers, but for a shorter amount of time, we're going to sit back and we're going to think about this. We're going to see what we can actually get, what actually makes sense for us to build. And these are quite big ships, and these are quite capable ships. And remember, they don't actually get commissioned until 1926. And there you go. You have the construction comparisons with Carlisle and Dane. So that's your C's and D's. You have displacement 7,500 tons roughly for standard against 4,200 and 4,850 tons. And their full displacement 9,400 tons roughly versus 5,300 tons and 6,000 tons. So yeah, they are bigger, but it's not massively so much bigger. You know, it's big enough to make the sense that they are large light cruisers and they're being built with, again, the other thing you get the idea of Emerald and Enterprise is they're being built for imperial policing. They're being built with a reality of Britain's got to operate in the wider world. The C's and D's, to an extent, still have the North Sea Mediterranean in their mind. They're built with more better range, and they are certainly built capable of doing C's and D, doing the range, and they do it. But the E's are built really with those ranges in mind. Turning 343. It's terrible. Turning 343. Cryensen. How about it? You know, I've been talking about a castle recently because I'm going to be doing some work on a television program about a German castle called Neuschwanstein. And my girlfriend very kindly helped me with the recording, with the pronunciation of that. John, look, post-World War I, ruining everything in. Nelson class was a good silver lining, at least. Good-looking ships also. Not really sure about that. Honestly, in nicest way, if World War I had continued and Nelson class had been built in that sort of period and in that sort of style, they'd have been probably a lot better. I'm just mentally going through it and thinking 12, 16-inch guns in 4 treble turrets, 2 fore, 2 aft. Yeah, that would have been a lot better. About another 10,000 tons. Vision, stack up your own brew bottles on a backlit of shelves using LEDs. Time to raise money on Patreon. Ooh, that would be a good idea. I was actually thinking it would require some sort of shelving unit from me to construct. I was thinking I'm going to require to get my, probably my sander and my planing saw out. Turning 343, but 2 ships is about 0 ships in essence. Not really, because their Emerald and Enterprise work with the C's and the D's. So really, you have to start considering the C's, D's, and E's as almost one group in terms of how the Royal Navy's thinking about them as cruisers. These are the examples. But again, look at it. You've got Edinburgh and Belfast, which are built as the group leaders for the Town class. They are far bigger than the rest of the Town class. In car, iron ships have battle honors displayed on boards. That's basically their version of a group of a unit award. Dirt Squad. The rank and file in the army were more likely to win a VC than the officers, as they're more likely to be in a position where uncommon valor is required. Officers also are held to slightly higher standards. For an officer to get uncommon valor, they basically need to do something which is suicidal. Phoenix, for helping you, that pronunciation Neuschwanstein was still quite funny. Thank you. Daniel Freeman. Marine Nelson class without limitations. Decent engines too. Oh, yes. Come on, I would not bug Dr. Clark about pronouncing SM Savitska, just say Island for, without means to offering him Hungarian food. Vision. Your World War I Nelson with 4 16 sounds like USN's cancelled South Dakotas. The G-Freeze. They're fun ships. But no. Actually, the thing that interests me most about this design is It is. The E-Class are in many ways the peak of the previous technology. They're using Brown Curtis geared turbines supplied by 8 Yarrow boilers, generating 80,000 ship horsepower for a top speed of 33 knots. And that's actually fairly good. The 8,000 nautical miles at 50 knots is equivalent to quite a lot of the Royal Navy cruisers built in the 1930s. They're good ships. In fact, honestly, 8,000 nautical miles at 15 knots, there's a few destroyers I can think of which would like that range. So, they're good-looking ships, though. They are good-looking ships, and they do get an interesting career. All right. Trent Telenka, how does the RN keep the manning numbers so low for the E-Class tonnage? USN seems to have about a quarter to half more crew for 9,000 tons, depending on AA amounts. These are peacetime complements to an extent. Wartime does add on about an extra 100. And also, that's their complement as they're manned at the end of World War One in peacetime. Once you have the surge in AA armaments, you do have a surge in crew requirements, but also there are the fact that the British use more the Royal Navy is using more automation from the get-go. It's not a surprise to me that the Queen Elizabeth class is built with an advanced internal logistics system to move stuff around, and the US Navy still doesn't have one on their forward class. When you think that the forward class, with its far more expensive build price, would have the unit inside, because it would really reduce crew numbers requirements, but they don't. Abasowski, want a pronunciation challenge? Please repeat after me. Scheisbesen. That's terrible. Darren, are they last cruisers single section on the set, aren't they? Yeah, they are. The last one's built for the Royal Navy. That's good. The same trends tend to be true for the rank and file. The medals tend to be awarded posthumously. Yeah. Mooncox, Casual Neutron Sign has the best backstory and the coolest fairy tale shots of all. That I agree, it is. And although I have to say, my personal feeling is that Ludwig II was seriously badly treated and was a victim of Bismarckian machinations. I will be back in a second. The trouble with having drunk that much water today. Yeah, right. Ay, caramba. Okay. Then personnel are the weakest of the British weak point of the British Armed Forces. That does tend to be the Achilles heel, because governments tend to be quite happy to invest in large objects, but they don't like to invest in increasing numbers of manpower. In fact, they tend to be like the idea of cutting manpower, because they seem to always be worried about the pension bill. Alexander, why did the RN go back to single turrets for their cruisers? All the armoured cruisers had doubles. it was to extent the problems with the dark armored cruisers. The turrets had been problematic, so they go back to single until they can get it to work again. Again, this is a wartime construction when they think they're not going to have much time, which is why the E-class are quite so important, because they're the Enterprise versus Emerald. So you've got Emerald, which is the full wartime sort of design, and you've got Enterprise, which is we realize we might be getting out of this war, so we're going to put in a double turret and try it out, and it works very well, and it becomes the base, as I said, for the future turrets. I don't know. The thought about the single stitching constant is that another technology that was just coming to an end, replaced with the twin, then triple turrets and the engines. Alex Hunt. I mean, Bismarck is basically a barbarian Machiavelli. Honestly, I wouldn't ever call Bismarck a barbarian. He's no a Teutonic Machiavelli, maybe. I think Tony's size. He was quite a big gentleman. There's got Ludwig II might have been badly treated, but he did bankrupt Bavaria, building fairy tale castles. He probably deserved it. To be honest, considering how much money those castles have made Bavaria since, it's rather nice. They were rather fortunate. John, look, Dr. Clark, which parts of Q class get most automation? The ship systems or air arm systems? What if you had your dream level automation? Could you crew the ship at what level could you crew the ship at? They're heavily automated. It's been the tradition. The Royal Navy has been working at automation since the age of sail, which sounds really funny to me. Think about it, but let's put it this way: there is a whole program the Royal Navy goes through in the age of sail, which is to develop the best chocks and blocks for its ropes. And the reason it does this is because it wants to reduce the number of manpower in manpower level it needs to maneuver its sails. That's not automation as you and I would understand it to this day, but it is certainly, to an extent, mechanization to reduce manpower. You then have the whole way through the interwar period, the whole way through through World War One and World War Two, the Royal Navy is consistently trying to make its ships be able to be crewed by less people to get more firepower from less. With the Queen Elizabeth class, this is a classic example in that there are so many systems, there are so many redundancies built into various systems to enable them to be maintained by minimal numbers, to be able to, them be fixed. Because if you can, okay, let's say a system will take about 100 man hours to fix. If you only have one of those systems aboard and it goes down, it suddenly becomes critical. If it's a semi-critical system and you have two systems aboard and one goes down, you can put one person on it, a couple of people on it, and it gets done in a week. If it's a critical system, you only have one, then you have to put your whole engineering crew on it to get it done in a day or so. It's the sort of it's applying to a system the idea of how do we get the best out of the personnel? How do we get the crew to be most successful and for the fewest possible numbers? And both sides are heavily automated. Hi, Carl Harmon. William Cox. Bismarck was a rock star in an age where mass communication was just waking up to its full potential. To an extent, he was very good at articulating it. Hi, Night Heron Productions. Jonik, that's Clark. Why do USN not use large-scale automation? Preference? Pretty much. They are wedded to the personnel to an extent, but also, I think they're they know it works, and they want to see how they always They like to let other nations push forward the boundaries and spend the money, and then the US Navy pops in afterwards as a rule and picks up the good ideas. This does work sometimes, but classically, of course, as with the Starfleet system versus what they then try to build for the LCS, it doesn't always work because sometimes the ideas they take from that system aren't as scalable. Or perhaps what they should have done is actually go for the Starfleet system and modify that as the baseline instead of building their own system from scratch up. Carmen, why would Canada be offered an E class in 1940s? Had World War II not broke out, surely they would still be towards the end of their social lives with 10 years, or am I wrong? Basically, Japan. Basically, the entire reason for it is Japan and the potential invasion of Japan and the need to have as many guns as you could for supporting operations in Japan. Alex Hunt, personal theory on the government's reason for not wanting to recruit too many people in the forces. Too great a danger of rising wages. Yep. Stephen White, my med's done this week. You're... I don't know, Steve White. That's right. The castles that have made a lot of money since, but at the same time, Ludwig was building castles. Brandenburg was ensuring that they, not Bavaria, would lead the German Confederation. Yep. That was the trouble. He wasn't as good at politics. Well, he tried to get involved in politics, but he didn't. He failed, and he got downhearted because of it. And he was really not good at it. In the nicest way, if I'd have been him, if I was building a castle, I would have had a personal guard there to make sure that things like what happened to him couldn't happen to him. He couldn't be easily ousted. Honestly, he needed to. His original conception for the castles was to turn them into places of learning and wisdom, where everyone would come together, and he could use them as big tools of influence. The trouble is, he suffers setbacks, and so he stops doing it. But that's completely off the topic of E-class cruisers. Sure, also, calling people Machiavelli doesn't make sense because he was actually a fairly liberal guy that thought that democracy needed to have reduced power in crisis, which makes sense. He wasn't actually authoritarian, no, but he was very good at politics, and that's the thing. Usually, when I describe someone as Machiavellian, I mean they are very good at playing the political game. And I wish more people actually studied Machiavelli, especially his book on war, The Art of War, by Machiavelli, is a very interesting book. I have got a copy somewhere around here. And in production, talking about getting the most out of the lease and getting the most out of the crew, can you touch on Brit versus German optics? I've heard Brit optics were more bare bones, should we say, for easy use? Okay, so the difference between the German optics and the British optics isn't so much their quality. It's the British ones do look slightly more clunky than their German counterparts. And my theory often is that the British are again thinking about operating around the world and maintaining them at a distance from home. They want something very survivable. The Germans, they are looking for perfection as always. Now, actually, honestly, there isn't that much difference in their performance. There's lots of talk about that difference because, people go, oh, the German Swiss ones, they were refined. They had this glass and that glass. And you look at the British ones, and the British ones also have very, very fine glass. Very, very fine glass. And you go, and it ends up being a case of it's the usual almost fetishization of German equipment, which is what we can blame the Boxer procurement on. But we'll leave that to one side. Income. How did the RN make unmanned radio-controlled battleship target ships work? Okay, I'm going to Centurion work between wars, and was this reliable? They worked very well between wars, and they usually used a destroyer or another ship as their mothership. So that would be transmitting orders to them, and it was basically like a radio-controlled car. It's that sort of similar sort of principles. Very similar technology ideas used as well. It's a slightly more powerful unit and slightly clunkier for its time, but it works. William Cox, I read The Prince and that in translation. The impression I get is that the old Mackie was a shameless self-promoter. His military offerings are less influential, and that lack of import is probably deserved. See, my brother worked with Brits RN in Australia on agricultural equipment. Started the central grease system to allow a single grease point to grease bearings for agricultural machinery. Yep. Latin production. Places of learning and wisdom where everything had come together and used them as big tools of influence? Hogwarts, then? To an extent, I often describe his castle as an attempt to build a Royal Navy cruiser out of stone. Honestly, the idea was that he could bring together the important diplomats. And you can almost understand it, because if you think about it, if you're dealing with someone like, I don't know, the rulers of Prussia, they, especially the one, Kaiser Wilhelm in the First World War, if you could invite him to a castle, he'd have been in heaven. You could probably get him to agree to pretty much anything. Excellent. Machiavelli's Art of War is tactically terrible, as it recommends the use of sword and shield in the age of pikes, halberds, and arquebuses. Actually, it isn't. Okay, maybe against the arquebuses, but they're not that fast reloading, and they're not that great yet. Against the pike and halberd, if you have a sword and shield against the pike, and you manage to bash it away, you can get in and do a lot of damage. Halberd, slightly more complicated. Yes, I do like the pole arms, and I have to say myself, I would prefer to be having a pole arm in that situation than a sword and shield. But you can use the sword and shield slightly more flexibly. And you can understand, for the side of fighting he has seen in Italy and the sort of fighting he has been watching, that makes sense in terms of small unit actions. Once you're dealing with a big force, an organized professional military force like you've got forming up in the Netherlands at this time, like you've got forming up in Britain and France and to an extent Spain, to an extent the Papal States as well, the Swiss Guard, that's less so. Carl Hammond, if the RN had enough crew, enough personnel, would you want a form of escort carrier? I did write a paper supporting an auxiliary aviation ship, but it wouldn't be high on my. Basically, there are lots of things I'd want to build first, and then if I had the personnel and the money left over, then I might consider it. Alexander, speaking of optics and iPhone, beyond the 1939 fighting instructions, what sources are there for Fleet Air on night fighting doctrine? That is the major one. There's a few papers written by the Naval War College and various groups like that. Okay. William Cox. The castle evolved through Vauban into the modern polygonal fortress. Yes, it did, and Vauban's an interesting one to look at. Jebula, did these ever get fired torpedoes in anger? Ooh, thank you for bringing this question up. Yes, they did. I'm not sure if they actually hit anything, but in Norway it does seem at least once they fire a torpedo, and it also seems to be some things about them firing torpedoes in some actions in the Mediterranean. Schoenmack, but what about Zeiss optics? They magically make the Germans Uber gunners more accurate because superior German engineering. I think I already dealt with the Zeiss formula. The Zeiss are very good and they are very lovely optics, but they're not the be-all and end-all of optics. There are some actually good optic makers who aren't Zeiss. Camels. I also kind of want to see the Type 45 23s put in reserve till their replacements are replaced. Have a rolling reserve, okay? Wouldn't be brilliant, but could be useful spare X-Force and commas. There are, maybe not the anti-submarine warfare Type 23s. There's an issue with doing that because of some of their uses, but the general purpose Type 23s, if you're just talking about general purpose reserve ship, that's quite a good idea. Win bomb, 16 fish and no hits. Life happens. So Thompson, afternoon. Hope the chat's gone well. Just on break from new part-time job. Looking forward to watching the videos this evening. Take care. Thank you, Suffer. Take care. Sounds. Hello, Austin. Vision, going correct. Weapons and tactics depend on the ground a battle is being fought. Open land versus forest versus mountains versus swamps versus city streets. City streets are especially annoying. I always remember that comment from an American general that the best place for urban warfare is in the countryside. Vision, British found in French Indo-Indian War and American Revolution that fighting in the forest is different than fighting in the field or on the moor. Yep, it is. You need a lot more riflemen and skirmishers. That's actually why once you get to the war in the Peninsula campaign, the British suddenly have these really excellent skirmishers, and which Wellington really takes advantage of, and which the other nation, the French are going, where did this come from? And really, the British have built the whole rifle regiments and the rifles based around the idea, and the green jackets around the idea of needing skirmishers. Read torpedoes and a usefulness. Sometimes making your opponent making maneuvers he didn't want to avoid your torpedoes is success in itself. And that was their main point. Let's be honest. Do you want to take on these cruisers unless you're sure you're going to win? And how do I put this? So let's say you're a Deutschland-class cruiser. You've got 11-inch guns. You've got all this thing. On every single rule of thumb, you should be able to wipe the ground with an E-class cruiser. Apart from, they've got a whole lot of torpedoes. So unless you manage to take them out in the first couple of salvos and they're bearing in on you and they fire their torpedoes, you could get damaged quite badly. You get damaged quite badly, you're out the war. We've been over the Battle of the River Plate is a classic example. Basically, the entire British strategy for dealing with large enemy surface raiders was to damage them and then destroy them by pack, not necessarily to engage them one-on-one and kill them one-on-one, in the initial thing. John Luke, Dr. Clark, if the will was there, what kind of size reserve fleet could be maintained? Also, what would be maintained? Honestly, if the will was there, you'd probably want to try and maintain a 30 to 40% escort reserve in modern days. In pre-World War II and in First World War, you maintained almost an equal reserve fleet. But nowadays, you'd probably be talking 30 to 40%, but you need a lot of reservists to do it. It wouldn't be easy, but it could be possible. And as I said, I made my own suggestion not that long back that, frankly, rather than cutting things like Albion and Bulwark, if they consider cutting them, it would be better to put them into reserve and have reservists crew them and call them up when you need them. Not maintain, you won't maintain them permanently available, but you could well have enough reservist crew that you could have them activatable within 48 hours, which would mean the crew would have to be on 48 hours, which means there are certain places in the world you can't go to. Okay, you can't be more than 48 hours away from your thing. So if while you're on the 48-hour rotation, no, and so you'd probably need a 150% reservist crew, about 5% to 10% regular crew to maintain it, and the crews would work in 30% shifts with about 3 of them on 48-hour, 3 shifts on 48-hour call at any one time, and the other 60% on, let's say, they'd be on 96 hours if it was real problematic. You might even, if you have both ships in reserve, you could probably pull the crews across it. And you'd probably need 210% crews or something like that. 20% 10% regular crews for 10% regular crew for each ship, and 7 rotations of 30%. And you'd have 3 on 48-hour notice, so you could get 1 ship going, and another 3 on 96-hour notice. So 4 days you could have both up. I mean, basically, if you've got 96 hours notice to get back to the UK and get to your unit, you can be anywhere in the world and get there. Shomak, Dr. Clark, but the internet told me that the Germans were the only ones that made good equipment, and everything else that everyone made was trash in comparison. Was I lied to? Yes, you were. And I know that's sarcasm, but I'm still going to emphasize you lie. Everyone lie when they see that, that's lying. Shomak, this advantage was glass coating, that color tint. After World War II, Zeiss factory was transferred to USSR. Angus Sonnet, is there a Mysteries of Deep tonight? I don't think so. There is, though, however, a very hungry Alex, which is why I might be going at 8:30, because so far in the heat, I have only had some sandwiches today. Because I didn't feel like eating. But now it's got cooler, I'm now getting hungry again. C1, familiar with Omaha class USN, made at Marblehead, Raleigh, Detroit, seem to be built as more as fire support for DDs, but served mostly in convoys and massive numbers like Roosevelt. Yep. Seth Thompson, well, good for you. It's nice having jobs. It's nice having work. It's one of the reasons why I like doing YouTube, because, honestly, with not going into to give lectures and going down to 2 days a week, and as I said, whilst, the contract's technically up now, but still, they've asked me to do a couple of things on Mondays and Tuesdays, and I'm going to keep doing them because it keeps me in with the university and makes them more likely to give me a contract renewed at the end of the 2 months gap. But with YouTube, it gives me the sort of experience of having a job, having something to structure my week around, which is nice. Derp Squad might explain the number of other ships the Royal Navy have awaiting scrapping. Yeah, I wish we had the reserves to crew them. Austin Hammond, you mentioned that a small navy just building up would be wiser to acquire a large ship first to train officers. What would be the smallest, largest ship a new navy should be looking at? If it's today, I'm probably looking at a frigate. I'm probably looking at something like the Ivor Hilt class frigates. They are very good to crew, maintain. They've got lots of space, and you can modify them a lot. Especially if you're building a brand new navy and you're doing it, you can buy into the Stanflex system. And for most small navies, that's perfect. For the Americans, there was this is one of the stories I hear. I've never quite managed to dig into this. There was actually, they decided to go with the LCS system, but actually the makers of Stanflex did offer them what they called the Stanflex X, which was extra large for Stanflex modules. And it was a range they developed based on the Stanflex system, which would have been far bigger. They still wouldn't have been as big as the modules gone to for the LCS, So that's why the Americans went with the LCS, but the modules. But I do sometimes wonder whether they would have been more sensible to go on with the Stanflex EX. But I've only heard that from one very, very erudite Danish source. So maybe she's right, maybe she's wrong. Okay. Nighttime Productions. I've got my granddads occupying forces Kriegsmarine Z binoculars. Look their age on the outside. Inside still look brand new. Seals have held up well. Great for bird watching. Yes, they will. In card, the 20th December 1943 action you refer to seems a major action. What was the British forces as Enterprise could not have taken them all on? Enterprise, Glasgow, and I'm fairly sure Gambia and Penelope were there as well, but I'm not 100% sure on Penelope. There is a dispute as to whether or not she arrived on station in time. It's one of those interesting things. Some actions just don't get enough history of them. I'm going to do more. I might do... It's going to sound strange. I have left that a bit blank because I'm going to dig into it more and find out more to find out exactly what went on. Definitely Glasgow and Enterprise there. I think Gambia was as well, looking at the deployment records and looking at where she was supposed to be. But the internet seems a bit sketchy, and the books I haven't really found a decent one on. So until I can get at the archive documents, then I will know for sure. Dev Squad, the other use for torpedoes is coup de grace for a ship damage before saving. Yeah, that is true. It is wrong. One thing that's often overlooked is that modern footwear really changes how and where you can fight. That it does. Carl McGusman, read Machiavelli and the Art of War. He stated somewhere that the battle formations, equipment, and tactics he devised are for the mountainous, constricted Italian landscape of dozen city-states. Yep, that would make sense. Stab Thompson, best wishes to all. Take care. Good luck for your job. Strong for all. Cal Gasberg, indeed, pikes are not great mountains. It's why the Romans gave them up in the first place. Romans understood what they were fighting in. Cal Gasberg, re-evolution of HMS E and powered mounts, 20mm. The 6-inch gun mounts were powered or power-assisted? Power-assisted. Take care to Sergeant's fault. Cal Gasbed, Greece and Macedonia is not much different, but the Macedonians stick to long spear phalanxes, and they were beaten by the Roman legions. Yeah, it's painful. Cal Harmon, for reserve fleet, I'd probably put all Type 45s and 23s as if you just use minimum needed to maintain what isn't crewed, could be used as spares or... Oh, yeah. William Cox, a swordsman is nothing against a wall of pikes because of the need to keep room for the sword arm. Swordsmen cannot dress their lines as tight as polearms can. That's true. If you have room to maneuver a formation of pikemen, it's excellent. If you don't have room to maneuver, then pikemen are in trouble. And the thing is, again, if you deploy your swordsmen carefully and put them in position, you can have a lot of fun with them. And Productions, hypothetically, might be too much of what if to answer. Had the CVA-1 ships been built, how long span do you think they'd have? Don't know what the intended commission date was. They'd have been entered service in the late 1970s, probably. So... probably roughly the same time as the Invincibles. Probably about 2010s. Probably about 40-odd years. Callum Gaspard, read German technological superiority. They ordered one of their Oceanic 800-ton submarines from Italy in 1913 or so, which ended up as Italian sub Bela and got sunk by Elisa. Cool. Carl Gaspard, read German technology superiority. I'll answer that one. Carl, because the German subtech was not advanced, they needed Italian tech advance. Yep. Italian subs were good ships. Good boats, man. John, what is the practical use of the ships the USA effectively keeps in reserve? Carriers, frigates, amphibs. Method in what is being kept just in case? Basically, it's to form up a massive fleet if they need it, and they could need it. Dan Freeman, I fear the Type 45s and Type 23s will be rather gutted of systems for their replacements to not be not very useful as reserve ships. That's the reality. Type 45s aren't going to be replaced for a while. I think by the time the Type 45s, you're building the Type probably 48s to replace Type 45s. I don't see much of their equipment being passed on. Not unless they've done what they're doing with the Type 23s, where they are basically field testing the Type 26 and Type 31 equipment before it goes into them. Danny Freeman, swords and shields versus pikes. If you have Roman-style large shield stabby sword, then you can counter pikes, but ideally they send in flankers. The ideal thing to deal with pikes is to actually come at them from angles they can't move to deal with you quickly. Paul Johnson, Dr. Clark, with your mum's sister's isolation, how does it affect your teaching? Surely this will make it nearly impossible. I do it mostly via online. I've been doing online teaching. I haven't been able to do the summer courses this year. Admittedly, Justin Craig has cancelled them. So that makes it a sort of, I miss that to an extent because I rather enjoy my, last year I got a beautiful school in Hertfordshire, and then I got another lovely school up in the Peak District. Yeah, it was a very nice time. A lovely school in the Peak District. Beautiful grounds. Rather like Harry. It's Denston College. Really nice. In what's it pronounced like? I have to be careful because I train myself to pronounce it one way to wind up my girlfriend, and it's not the right way to pronounce it. And it's Utoxeter. And I pronounce it sometimes to wind up as Atoxeter. Dope Scott, whilst the reserve personnel is available, it's a lot quicker to train up a crew to basic competence than to rebuild a class of vessels. Yes. It is a lot quicker these days to train crew. William Cox, the problem with the muffled fleet is the effects of the sea on the old hulls, compared with a couple of parasmon and funding, complicated by the length of time needed to reactivate the individual ships. That is always a problem. This is why you have a reserve fleet, but you work it out. Both Emerald and Enterprise were reserve ships by the time World War II began, but they were very quickly activated and very quickly available. So the reserves then were kept to a high state of readiness, which cost money, but it was part of the Royal Navy's plan for warfighting. They weren't ever going to get enough money to have all the ships they needed in service in peacetime, for wartime. Next time, please don't make me die on the Pikes versus Swords Hill. I won't. William Cox has put forward some excellent points, but the thing is, I always try and make out the point that these things are often more complicated than a simple ipso facto analysis. I.e., swords versus pikes. If I'm in open terrain and you are a mass group of pikemen versus a mass group of swordsmen of equivalent numbers, I would probably put the money on the pikemen, unless the swordsmen divide and manage to attack simultaneously from different directions. Either way, the pikemen have a chance, especially if they form circle and wheel. But the issues are, if you are in narrow, confined territory, and you can be attacked before you form up the pike wall, or in a space where you can't form a pike wall, where it's going to be one-on-one, then the sword and shield does have an advantage. If you're in narrow streets and I manage to attack you without you realizing and put your pike up against the wall and hack you, you're not going to get anywhere. So what I'm trying to say is it's complicated. It's like everything in defense and everything in war. There's often not a simple answer. The best answer is yes, I will have a force of pikemen, But I might have a few swordsmen as well, and I might have a few archers, because then if I have the 3 groups together and I have a few, then that really helps me with things. Kahaman, it saddens me how many ships go to the breakers yards without ever being in reserve or anything. It's a shame, surely, to be useful if war breaks out. It's more complicated when you're dealing with escorts because of the range of weapon systems. But when you're talking about larger ships like amphibious landing ship docks, etc., well, honestly, the ability to do the landing ship docks role, as long as the ship's hull is maintained, is not going to be broadly affected. Right. And now we are on to one of the examples from part 3, which I thought you all might enjoy. The Enterprise, as it goes on, as it develops. Well, you know, its name has a future. And, yeah. I couldn't find a picture of the later ones. I do know the later ones are talked about, and there are various productions of them, but I couldn't find a picture which has all of them on, so I could only go up to E, I'm afraid. I am sorry for that, but I have to say my favorite is probably... Honestly, I like the E. I always thought the D's and the C's were a bit... I do not understand the whole thing with Starfleet that they stick their command module, their bridge, on the top of the freaking ship. Why? Why? You are building a big ship. You are not going to be looking out to get a visual inspection. Build it inside. Give it protection. Death Squad, I don't know, present the crews out, current crew out among the reserve ships, promote those who drew for promotion, put the newly trained crew on the most basic tasks. Yeah. Sean Mack, Rome 2 has taught me the phalanx bullies you until you get behind it, and then you bully it. Gonigan, what happened to Admiralty Conqueror's armor raise after she was converted into HMS Eagle? Quite a lot of them were kept. That's why HMS Eagle was quite so hard to kill. Death Squad, I'm not saying it's the best solution, just the best solution that you can get the past political side of M&D and Treasury. John Luke, does the idea of reserve not immediately fall afoul of fitted for but not with? Resources go direct to max potential of what is on hand. Again, as I said, with escorts it's slightly harder, but I would say... Again, it's things like landing platform docks. It would be RFAs. I'd love to see them. And things like minesweepers and patrol ships. Bijan, keeping subs River class OPVs in a ready reserve would make sense today. They're not having the complex radars and missiles of frigates and destroyers. Yep. Bijan, reading Commodore Clack's book, a lot of his ships in Volks War had 1950s equipment that, while out of date, still worked well enough. Yep. Turning 343, you're not missing anything after 1701E. Then if you read pipes onto swords, the balance swings back and forth for millennia. If swords is actually shield and pokey thing, versus pike being longer, two-handed pokey thing, only gets broken by guns, really. William Cox, the 1950s were the last gasp of the age of valve technology, radio tubes, transistors. There were all sorts of fun things in 1950s technology. Come on, Enterprise, Dreadnought, and Warrior as first RN space cruisers? Tempting. Excellent. D had a battle bridge that was very protected and almost never used. Yep. Simon, good news. Saw David Webber interview, and he is in the early talks for a TV series. Go Honor Harrington and the Royal Mediterranean Fleet. Royal Manticorian Fleet. Cool. Derp Squad. Shoma, any attack on flat side of phalanx is difficult if you've seen them before you arrive. Yes, that's always the theory. They go vertical and then down. But you're attacking that side, and then someone comes from that side. It becomes a more complicated maneuver. Danny Freeman, 1950s radios were not welcome, though. Some of the stuff was rubbish. Some of the ships actually didn't even have working radios in the amphibious task group. Some of the merchant ships just didn't have working radios. Didn't have radios at all. But they are advanced civilizations from the future with lasers and shield. They can't have common sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure, Mike. But then you will not be able to use the magic cameras that they have that can get views from outside the ship on the view screen. Yeah, I know. Alex Hunt, I mean, Starfleet has no common sense until Voyager. Honestly, I wouldn't say they have common sense till... To an extent. My favourite Starfleet vessel often is the Defiant, but I would modify the Defiant. I have plans for how I'd make the Defiant work. Actual drawings. I was teaching CAD to the mechanical engineering students. I needed something to draw, so I drew a Defiant and worked out how I'd fix her. It's on my university CAD system, though, so I can't really get it off. Vision, the Expanse and Battlestar Galactica put the CIC deep in the ship. In Star Trek, they recently added windows to the bridge, so it's a sad... yeah... Come on, they must have got the battle station idea from the Queen Anne's Mansions of World War II RN commanders' nasty habit of not using protected command stations. Those things had a reason. They had to because everything was done by visibility. There was a reason for it. William Cox, the phalanx was reinvented by the Scots as the boarshed formation. It was the ideal for odd terrain challenge. Reinvented and reinterpreted. Then Freeman, they gave up the idea fairly early and never used them. I think the only thing that did work was pulling them into an action information center. Excellent. Okay. Going to darn the phalanx hill. Magnesia shows the sheer resilience of the pike phalanx. It gets flanked, forms a square, and is only broken when the elephants inside the square rampaged. To be fair, actually, the real problem with the phalanx formation, as the English showed on many occasions when they actually were properly handled with the phalanx formation, was archers. Because if they take enough down of you, then enough of the phalanx down, then it's a problem. Because the phalanx is not very fast, not very mobile, and they can't really shield themselves. And they're often the less well-equipped troops in terms of armor, so you can do a lot of damage with your bows. So let's be honest, the real problem for a phalanx isn't a swordsman. So then you have to ask, what's the best thing at protecting your archers from cavalry? Well, that's going to be pikemen. So to protect your archers from cavalry, you need to use pikemen. The archers take out the pikemen. What takes out the archers? Cavalry. So you need all three. It's called a combined arms weapon system. So we'll go on to about 8:30 because then I am getting hungry, so I'm going to be ordering food. I know I just called a combined unit a combined arms weapon system. Carl I know still possible inspiration for it. What happened to all those American Mark II 6-inch guns after their ships were cancelled? Mostly scrap. Some of them get used on other things, but mostly scrapped. Danny Freeman, do you mean a Shiltron? Probably. Danny Freeman, Enterprise D's battle bridge was the original Enterprise bridge set from the films, which was used often for various ship bridges. Its module design allowed it to look different. Cool. Paul Johnson, Dr. Are the RN going to use drones on the QE like the Gannet was in the past? Probably. Grace Kelsey, Hunt. A pike phalanx needs extreme discipline to be used effectively. Undisciplined levies don't do so well. Yep. Martin Dock. My missus is a huge Trekkie and asks, how would you get the cloaking system to work without leaving a trail that sensors could pick it up? I would make sure the cloaking system covers my energy field, basically. Because the cloaking system is, in practice, it's more about protecting you against electronic leakages and making you invisible electronically than is about anything else on the electromagnetic spectrum. So you need to make sure it's in a sealing system, which seals your electromagnetic radiation inside you and makes you appear like one of it. So it's basically a form of electronic mirroring. And actually, interesting enough, British Aerospace Engineering has been working on something not too dissimilar to that for tank technology. It's decades and decades away from actually being practical, although you wouldn't believe that if you read their marketing materials. But there's a reason why no actual government is actually yet investing in what is supposed to be a spectacular piece of technology, because they're all looking at going, are you quite sure? Alex Hunt, the English only fought disorganized Scots militia. The Swiss and Alexander both showed that decent pike troops could overrun missile troops. Actually, they didn't. In the nicest way, Alexander used cavalry to overrun missile troops shamelessly. He had the heaviest cavalry arm of antiquity. He had the largest number of cavalry as a percentage of his army of any army. In fact, he would have probably beaten the Romans because of his large numbers of cavalry. And as for the Swiss, well, they have sort of terrain advantages, but they also use missile weapons themselves. So it's sort of a combination. Kahan, what are you having for food, Dr. Clark? Ooh. I've been told there is nothing out of the freezer or anything for me, so probably it's going to be a takeaway tonight, in which case probably pizza, because my girlfriend was talking the other day about a pizza she had, and that sounded lovely, so I'm probably going to order a pizza. Vision, working on HMS Enterprise Star Trek meme. We'll post on Discord in the news section. Cool. If it's good, I will tweet it at HMS Enterprise herself for you. Vision. Don Freeman, the Dutch and Swedes had good ideas in the Air-Pike Shot Act, and plenty of English, Scots, and Irish served in the armies of the Continental Lydia. Yep. Angus Son, please take care of yourself and be one in hot weather. I do intend to. As you can see, the good thing about this is what I do is I fill them up in the morning, and I insist I have to drink them in the evening. The trouble is, I have drunk all my water bottles before it's even the end of the day, which is why my poor body is currently going, we must get rid of water. We've had too much water. William Cox, my original science fiction either throws normal things into exceptional situations or transfers exceptional things into mundane circumstances. Oh, fun. William Cox, all about dispersing your ion trail. Yeah. Scientifically, the warp field would cloak a vessel, since light would pass around it. True. But that's why when ships come out of warp, you detect them. I'm not prepared to allow serious as seeming conversation about physics of Star Trek or Star Wars. It just doesn't work. That's what William Cox. You're forgetting the pike and shot formations with the Musketmen hiding under the pikes. They were always good. Daniel, I just had a huge bowl of salad. I am worried for you, Daniel. The amount of talking we keep doing, you need more meat, or at least more protein. And you know. To be honest, the Romans preferred they had the shield and the sword that engagement, but you must remember they had spears they chucked, so they would chuck their heavy pillar at least once, possibly have a second one, chuck them both, and then charge in. So if you're a phalanx formation, you've had two very heavy from each of these other men, two very heavy spears come through. They are designed to break off, so you can't chuck them back. They smash into your shields. They smash into your formation. They're difficult to get out, so you can just have that hit you, and then you have a horde of charging people with massive shields coming at you perhaps in testudo form or perhaps more free, and attacking you. And then what they will do is they will then whistle. You'll hear these whistles going off, and every time whistle goes through it, the whistle goes off, boom, a new line of reinforcements come up, take the front row, and they keep running. So you're getting tired fighting, and that's how the Romans win the battle, because you've been disorganized, then you're being hit, and just when you're starting to tire, they replace their front line, and then they replace their front line again, and then they replace their front line again, and it's a machine in how it takes, and as long as the Romans can maintain that form of discipline, that's the one they can dominate the world. It's when that discipline starts to break down, that's when they get into trouble. Vision, for the most part, true. Sci-fi, but sci-fi needs to be logical and consistent with its own universe. Star Trek has never been good at that, and it's gotten worse. Yeah. Greg Sassy, B2A, in other news, USS Essex LHD-2 just rolled into Pearl carrying a Wildcat, Bearcat, B-26, Catalina Mustang, and a few other goodies for World War II celebrations at the end of the month. I know, I saw that in the picture. That's cool. But it does make me wonder how much trouble they've been having with their Harriers and possibly their F-35s, that they're now re-equipping their carriers with Bearcats. But actually, Bearcats are pretty cool. Vision, Darren Freeman. Earthlight, 1955 by Arthur C. Clarke is a good hard sci-fi book with rare for Clarke. A space battle. 3 ships from Mars colony battle Earth shore battery on the lunar surface. Oof, fun. Cox, it's called continuity. The worst that it is serial fantasy. In my Patch World series, I try to provide a rock-solid physics with room for magic as a standing field with its own gauge practice, like the Kel. Shomak. And the period we're talking about is when the Trianii were a thing. Ah, yes! Take it to the Trianii! We were pikemen! And of course, the Trianii were also the richest soldiers. They were the ones who'd been fighting for years. They were stone cold veterans who probably made quite a lot of money and being soldiers. And if it went to the Trianii, that is when you had the problems. Because you had the Hastii, the Principe, and the Trianii, and it's a whole thing. Austin Hammond, idea. Acquire F8F and paint it orange, call it Brewcat. Ooh, tempting. Oh, Ren. Dr. Clark, spear, not pike. It works. It works. Right. Let's see what we've got coming out. Well, on Monday we have the What If Singtown incident with Daniel Freeman. So thank you, Daniel. That's going to be those videos I'm going to start making come out on Saturday and Sunday and then Monday. I'm still working out the introduction videos. So that's going to be fun. Probably going to have about 7 videos at the introduction videos I've been thinking about. And yeah, should be a lot of fun. Let's see. We've got Battle of Texel. Could Crete have been saved in 1941? Convoy War and Perfect Storm PQ-17. Patreon video 5. Yeah. It's all going to be a lot of fun. So, that's what we've got coming up. It is now almost very close to past, so I'll just say last questions, and then I will toddle off to order my pizza. Danny Freeman, the line between a lance, spear, and pike is a fuzzy one. Polearm. Just stick to the phrase polearm. It makes life a lot easier. Carl yes, swordfish. Good luck shooting that thing down or picking it up on radar. It's so slow I can't aim at it. Yeah. Yeah. I am tempted actually to see if we could organise one to fly off HMS Queen Elizabeth just for the hell of it. Just to wind up everyone, basically. Gunning, my definition between lance and pike is it's a lance if it's on a horseback and a pike if it's on foot. I would say it depends on the head of the weapon and the shape of the butt, but we'll leave that to one side. Danny Phillips. But Repulse, Rodney, Benbow, Collingwood are currently facing 10 American pre-dreads, all lighter and less well armoured. I'm not worried. Rule waves too. Ooh. Vision, if you think hard about war in space, the less and less it seems a good idea. Also, with Star Trek tech, there's little need for war, since you would never lack resources in your own solar system. That's the theory, but as we all know, actually having everything tends to make people more greedy, and that probably works across species. Thank you, everyone. Steamwhite, how much further can, say, a 105mm howitzer shoot on a lunar surface? But recoil going to be awesome. A long, long way. Could be interesting, though. Dirt Squad. The Hastii are younger men, intended to charge the enemy and tar them. The Principe were more heavily armoured and killed the enemy. The Trani mainly stopped everyone else running away, and stepped in if you needed to do the really big fights. Carmen, what pizza are you ordering, Dr. Clark? And will you post a photo on Discord? I haven't decided, and maybe. It could be pure pepperoni, it could be all sorts of meat. I'm feeling like a meaty pizza for some reason. James, take care, Jay. Good night. Until brew ships on Sunday. Dirt Squad, a swordfish could probably take off and land length for QE flight deck. I think they could as well. No pineapple on pizza, Golden Eagle. Danny Freeman, Trani versus Napoleon's Old Guard. If the Old Guard were actually firing, the Old Guard. But if the Old Guard are just advancing in column to try and ram through the Trianii, probably. Take care, everyone. Right. Hope you've had a nice evening. Thank you very much for chatting. Hope you enjoyed the lives about the E-Class cruisers. I know we didn't chat all the time about the E-Class cruisers, so these things have been interesting, but, you know, thank you. Take care. And hope you enjoyed. And thank you for the super chats, and thank you for everyone who signed up to Patreon and all these things. It really is very kind of you. And I will start the voting for the video for what next month's Patreon topics. That's September's Patreon topics, probably tomorrow, maybe tonight. Carmen, take care, Hilfar. Wow, thank you, Carl. Danny Freeman, did the Trani wear red cloaks by any chance? Certainly they did. We do think they did in the later Republican period. We're not quite sure about the earlier periods. Carl Gaspard, in a strong wind, any Q could actually outrun a poor old swordfish. Possibly. Take care, William Cox. Take care, Dirt Squad. Take care, Greg. Thank you, Stephen. Take care, everyone. Bye. Right, let's see. Let's do... Actually, I'll do this first. Thought you'd like to see the Enterprise again before I went. Golden Eagle, can you drink a Tsingtao beer when you drink about Tsingtao? No, unfortunately no, because I don't drink, but, you know. Nice idea. Maybe Daniel would do that on us. Take care, everyone. Take care, Federico. Thank you, William. And William, thank you very much earlier for your earlier comment and another comment under the part 1. It was very much appreciated. Thank you, William, for that one.